Tonight I'm bringing forth a resolution to provide a funding mechanism for the grant match for the airport realignment for Moscow Pullman Airport. By way of background, City Council's had signed a joint operations agreement back in 2014. We have had a long history with the airport dating back to the 70s and probably even before then, but that's what I could find recently. We had financial discussions about this last July, a year ago, and we affirmed that through our budget process in the FY 2015 budget by way of providing a property tax pledge for 10 years, and this is the first year of that. And we've started receiving those funds in the January tax turnover this year, and then again into this month we'll receive another. So that provides the funding for what this resolution that I'm proposing tonight, which is to try and draw forth a mechanism for interfund investments into the general fund and providing about $500,000 towards the city of Pullman is what this is really trying to do. And what my cash flow statement was a year ago was $500,000 for the first 5 years, and then repayment continuing on through that. But we'll be receiving $250,000 each year in the way of property tax. So this funding is just to try and have the other funds provide investments. There's some key provisions that I've called out in the resolution that I'll outline. But we talked about this on June 22nd at the Public Works Finance meeting, and there's some discussions about the $119 million funding for the grant and the match that's set at 8.125%, which is $9,668,750. And we also discussed at that meeting that $2.5 million would come from the city of Pullman, and $2.5 million would come from us, the city of Moscow, as co-sponsors. And so then the discussion came about what about the remaining $4,668,750, which is the other portion of that match. Since that time, our administration from both cities have met a couple of times, the mayors have met a couple of times, and from my understanding, and I'll allow them to talk about that in just a moment, that we've met those satisfactions in terms of with pretty high regard about where we're positioning ourselves. So, Gary, you want to talk about that at all?
For me?
Sure, go ahead, Gary.
I'll let the mayor can talk about his interaction with this. As the council knows, this was brought up to council last July. We had actually a special budget workshop on August 4th of 2014, during which time council authorized to propose the funding of the $2.5 million grant participation for the FAA grant match. The project originally started out at $89 million. Of course, it's a multi-year project, and as we all know, there is construction inflation and other things that occur during a project of that length. So realistically, the airport board requested the project engineers who were scoping the project for what they thought would be a maximum out-of-pocket to complete the project, and that's where the $119 million came in. As Don reported to Public Works Finance Committee, you'll recall that the congressional delegation for both Washington and Idaho was lobbied by our mayors and city councils and other legislators to reduce the match amount for the state of Washington, which is where the airport's located, even though it's recognized as one of 7 commercial airfields for the state of Idaho. And the Washington grant match is 10%. The state of Idaho's grant match, FAA grant match, is 5%. It's a function of the amount of tribal and federal land that is held in those respective states. Of course, we tried to lobby them to give us the 5%. They said, well, we'll give you a hybrid, and that's where the 8.125 came from. So that being said, as Don indicated, the maximum under that $119 million would be $9.96 million. At that time, Mayor Lambert asked Don and I to work through and determine what could be done by the City of Moscow reasonably without seriously impacting City of Moscow operations. We did that, and that's, you'll recall, last August 4th when that was brought forward. And as Don indicated, there was a foregone amount of property taxes that was taken along with new construction last year amounting to $250,000. The idea was because it was a 5-year project, we would need to take care of our 5-year or our $2.5 million obligation within that 5-year period. We did not have sufficient capacity without impacting operations to take the full $500,000 per year of taxes. So Don suggested that we could do some interfund borrowing, which would allow us to utilize the $250,000 tax increase of foregone amount and borrowing from pools of money that the city has in reserve from the enterprise funds, the payroll service fund, so on and so forth. Funds that are necessary to have but are not being utilized at the time, and utilize those funds to meet that $500,000 a year obligation for 5 years. Then at the end of that 5-year period, the $250,000 continuing tax would pay those funds back, and I believe it was 3% returned on.
I believe I used 2.5%.
2.5%, which is significantly above the amount that is being paid by the local government investment pool by the state of Idaho. So it seemed to make sense if the council wanted to move forward with that. Council gave us that direction. We integrated those numbers into the budget, and in this budget that you will see on the 13th, you'll also see there is a continuing obligation of $500,000 in each budget year for the ensuing 4 years. So that being said, the discussion of who will assist with this, I'll let the mayor discuss that. However, we had always anticipated that as sponsors of the FAA grant, that the City of Moscow and the City of Pullman would be the main sponsors, and that's why the FAA requires the cities to sign the grant. We are responsible for grants that we accept. We have other players: Washington State University, University of Idaho, Latah County, Whitman County, Port of Whitman, and perhaps, hopefully, some private users will also participate in that. So, as Don said, we have about $4.6 million that we need in addition if the project goes to the maximum $119 million. Our engineers keep telling us that they don't believe it will go that high, and they've been encouraged to keep those costs as low as possible. That being said, the mayor, I know Mayor Lambert has approached entities, our governmental entities on this side, University of Idaho and Latah County, and discussions are continuing. And Mayor Johnson and Mark Workman are approaching Washington State University, the Port of Whitman, and Whitman County, as well as any private folks on their side to determine their level of commitment as well. They don't have their names on the bottom line at this time. However, we just met with them last week. I'll let the mayor comment about that, but we were very encouraged by what we heard.
With that, as we're going along here, this is an ongoing process that's going to happen for a number of years. So next year, we're going to have another resolution just like this, and we're going to have that for a number of years until this thing goes through, because this project is going to be a 5-6 year project. We all know that. With that being said, I met with President Stabens from the university last week, and he is committed to $500,000 towards this project, and will give us a letter of support on that, Gary. We know that Washington State University is going to give $1 million to this plan. They are right now, we're in the middle of working on some land agreements with Washington State University, so it's going to take a few months for that to work through. We know that Washington State Transportation Department is given $250,000 a year over year for us towards this project. As Gary had said, I had talked to Chair of County Commissioners Dick Walliser and Tom Lamar. Their budget process, similar to our budget process, we know we're going to get some kind of funding out of them. Haven't got a commitment for money yet, but we will know that in September. We also have some private donations that are going to be coming along as well. And I just got to tell you, I'm confident. We talked about the Port of Whitman and Whitman County as well. I'm not concerned about where we're headed with this. It's going to take, it's not going to be something that's going to happen overnight. It's going to be an ongoing process that we've got to work through. And we've got a number of players that are on board with this. Yes, The City of Moscow and the City of Pullman, as far as the FAA is concerned, they're the only two sponsors that they're dealing with, but we've got other entities that are very much in this. And how this thing will work and make it happen is to have all those entities working together. And I completely believe we've got that. So, John?
Bill, just to clarify, when we went through this a year ago, we were assured as a council that no checks would be written until there was some bona fides from other places. This agreement here keeps that in mind, doesn't it?
Well, the way that it's understood, the funding, our funding goes into like an escrow, John, because
Yeah.
the City of Pullman will be the city that will be making the payments. So the monies will be funneled through the various entities to the City of Pullman in an escrow account for this very thing. That's how it works.
Well, yeah.
To pay for the FAA.
If something happens, who knows what, and things don't work out, the money that the city of Moscow puts in cannot just be spent.
It will not disappear if it hasn't been spent, John, if something goes awry.
That's what I thought
you
it
know,
was,
I mean,
Bill. I just wanted to make sure.
Those are the what-ifs you can run into, but.
Sure.
Gary, you want to comment on that?
Yeah, Tony Bean, the executive director of the Pullman Moscow Airport, is here. The way it's being explained to us by both Tony and by the financing agent, who's been retained by the airport board, is that the funds will come in a series of grants. And as the council has signed over the years, has authorized various grants. In fact, there will be a grant coming through here in just a couple of weeks, I believe, for snow removal equipment. Tony, or that's been done already? Okay, that's been, council authorized that as well. But these series of grants are for different phases of the project. So every time that a grant is accepted, the sponsors sign it, that money is obligated. And then as the next grant comes up, and if the money is not there, then you don't authorize payment. You don't sign the grant. Now, there are timing issues here, and it would be nice to be able to tell you categorically that we have everybody's name on the bottom line, but as the mayor indicated, Washington State University is, and the consultants are currently working on some land that is necessary for the runway expansion and realignment. There are some folks who are waiting for some decisions to be made prior to coming forth with their commitment as well. As the mayor indicated, there are also other budget cycles. So is there a little bit of uncertainty? Absolutely. There's always a little bit of uncertainty. There will be a resolution, a further resolution coming forward from the airport board and the city of Moscow saying that the monies that we authorize to go to the airport board will be utilized by the airport board for this project and only for this project.
Okay. Walter?